What's up traders? In this video, I'll be performing a market forecast on EUR/USD. So stay tuned. Now we're going to be taking a look here at EUR/USD, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing my outlook for this pair for the month of February 2025. Now, my intention is to show you guys how I establish a directional bias, whether long-term or short-term, and then how I use that directional bias to identify potential areas to trade from. Those are two of the most important aspects of any trading system: being able to determine what direction to trade in, and then also being able to determine and identify key high probability areas in which you can look to execute trades that are in line with that direction that you're looking to trade in. Once you've got those two elements of your trading approach nailed down with clearly defined rules that are easily understandable and easily repeatable, then it's simply a case of having an entry model or a couple of entry models that you can then use to execute in these high probability areas that you have identified. As always, we're going to be focusing on our weekly, daily, and 4-hour time frames in order to give you guys a medium to long-term outlook of what I'm thinking is going to be happening here on this pair. We're going to start off on the weekly time frame. As we can see, our weekly time frame is currently bearish. Our last bearish break of structure took place in here. We have this established bearish weekly range in which our price action pulled back into the equilibrium. We had a fairly prolonged period of consolidation around our EQ, but then towards the back end of 2024, price action broke out of that consolidation phase to the downside, which saw our internal structure essentially shift from a bullish market state to a bearish market state with this bearish break in here. And what this internal structure shift now signaled was the potential start of our weekly bearish continuation phase. I have my internal strong high marked out in here, as this is the starting point of the internal impulsive phase which generated this internal break. And at the time of recording this video, we have yet to see the establishment of the new internal week low. Because of the fact that we are trading within this overall bearish range on the weekly time frame, our overall objective for this bearish range is a violation of our weekly week low down here, which sits at 0.95358. So we can now establish that our overall directional bias for EUR/USD is bearish because of the fact that we have obtained that directional bias on our weekly time frame. But within that overall directional bias, it is also important for us to try and figure out exactly how price action is going to go about targeting potentially this weekly week low. Now, because of the fact that we have not yet seen the establishment of our internal week low here, we can anticipate that potentially we're going to be seeing a period of bearishness from an internal structure point of view in order to help with establishing that new internal range. We're going to be investigating that in just a second when we drop down to our daily time frame. But as it stands, because we have yet to see the establishment of that new range, there is an element of anticipation that bullishness can enter this market, even if it's just for the short term. And then once that new internal range is established, this weekly supply zone that sits up here would then come into focus as being our main potential buy target for any internal pullback phase that takes place. Our next main sell target for this current price action on the weekly time frame is going to be this weekly demand zone that sits down here. Now, this is regarded as a previously unmitigated POI because it's a POI that formed during the pullback phase that was not mitigated. And so because this is regarded as a previously unmitigated zone, the anticipation would be for a short-term bullish reaction when price action comes in to interact with this POI before we potentially see a resumption of this underlying bearish trend. And so because we are anticipating a short-term bullish reaction, if our internal structure continues to trade bearish, and if we don't see the establishment of our new internal week low before price action comes in to mitigate with this POI, we would then, together with that potential short-term bearish reaction, anticipate our internal pullback to potentially originate from this POI because of the fact that we're just anticipating the short-term reaction. So our weekly time frame is very simple and very straightforward. Main sell target is our weekly week low down here. The next sell target is our weekly demand in here, which we anticipate will just generate a short-term bullish reaction. And then this weekly supply that sits at the extreme would obviously be the main buy target for our internal pullback phase whenever that is to occur. And so now from the weekly time frame, we can drop down to our daily time frame, which I regard as the internal of my weekly time frame. And here again, very nice, very clean, very straightforward price action that we can see on our daily time frame. We can see that we have that prolonged period of consolidation that was hovering around the EQ of our weekly bearish range. We had our daily external structure shift from a bullish market state to a bearish market state after price action broke out of that consolidation and violated this daily low. And right now, as it stands, price action is currently trading within this impulsive phase, which generated that bearish daily breaker structure. We have our daily strong high marked out here as the starting point of that impulsive phase. And we can see that our internal structure is currently still pointing bearish. Our most recent internal daily range sits in here. And we can see that price action has already come back in to interact with a well-priced daily supply zone within that internal range. And we have already seen an initial bearish reaction out of that POI. When we drop down to our 4-hour time frame, we will have a much closer look at this internal range. So right now, our daily time frame is in alignment with our weekly time frame. It is pointing bearish as well. As we noted on the weekly time frame though, we have yet to see the establishment of our new daily week low. And the reason we have yet to see that is because our internal structure is still pointing bearish as it is facilitating the impulsive phase. So this means that our new daily week low will only be established once our internal structure shifts from a bearish market state to a bullish market state, i.e. after our internal strong high is violated. Until that happens, however, we can look to trade in line with this daily impulsive phase, which is currently pointing bearish. And so that means that at this current moment in time, we can look for trading opportunities to target this daily internal week low, because that is the current objective of our internal price action, which is pointing bearish. Now, if we see our daily internal structure shift bullish, that would obviously signal the start of our daily pullback phase. It will allow for the establishment of our new daily week low. And then our next main buy target for that daily pullback phase would be this daily supply flip zone in here. This would essentially be the first well-priced POI within the new daily external range where our daily continuation phase could originate from. And so this daily supply would not only offer a potential high probability area where we can look to sell from, but it would also act as a very good buy target that we could use when looking to trade the daily pullback phase. Beyond this daily supply flip zone, our refined daily supply, which sits at the extreme, would be the next potential buy target if we were to see a deeper daily pullback phase. And this would now be essentially the last POI within the new daily external range where that daily continuation phase could originate from. So going into the month of Feb 2025, our directional bias from a daily point of view is bearish because our impulsive phase is still taking place. Our next main sell target is going to be this daily internal week low down here, which sits at around 101.766. If, however, we see our internal structure shift bullish and fail to violate this internal week low, our next initial buy target for that new daily pullback phase would be this daily supply flip zone here. If we now look at our 4-hour time frame, which I regard as the internal of my daily time frame, we can see that our 4-hour, much like the daily, much like the weekly, is currently also pointing bearish. The 4-hour time frame is facilitating our daily impulsive phase, and we have this 4-hour bearish external range, which has already been established. Our major 4-hour break of structure took place in here, and we can see that our internal structure went from a bearish market state as it was facilitating the impulsive phase to a bullish market state after this internal strong high was violated. So as it stands, our 4-hour pullback phase is technically still taking place. There is an added layer of complexity that has been introduced here on the 4-hour time frame in the form of this prolonged internal impulsive phase. Notice how this prolonged internal impulsive phase has generated a very large internal bullish range. The last bullish internal break of structure took place in here. The starting point of that impulsive phase that generated that internal bullish break of structure coincides with our current 4-hour week low, and we can see that we have our 4-hour internal week high that sits up here. Now this internal week high was established after price action came back in to interact with this daily supply zone in here. Not only did it allow for the establishment of this internal week high, but it also facilitated the internal pullback phase that is currently taking place. So at this current moment in time, overall, our 4-hour is bullish, and the overall objective is a violation of this 4-hour week low, which sits at around, again, 101.766. However, we have the presence of this very large bullish internal range, which does introduce the possibility of seeing a deeper 4-hour pullback phase. Now, I want to draw your attention to the presence of this 4-hour supply zone that sits above daily supply and that sits above the 4-hour internal week high. This 4-hour supply zone forms part of a 4-hour supply chain. It is obviously well priced within our range, but then crucially, it also sits just above this liquidity pool that sits at the top of our daily supply zone. The presence of this 4-hour supply chain does suggest that we could see one more bullish internal break of structure before our continuation phase takes place. Now, for me personally, I would definitely prefer to see one more bullish internal break of structure before that continuation takes place, because that would allow for better separation between our 4-hour external structure and our 4-hour internal structure. If we were to see a new bullish internal break of structure, and let's just say that were to happen immediately from this point here, this would now become our new 4-hour internal strong low, which means it would be separated from our 4-hour week low. And then we would have a very clear area where we would see the confirmation of our continuation phase as having begun. Despite the complexity that this scenario introduces with regards to that relationship that exists between internal and external structure, my approach and plan of attack for trading this pair remains fairly straightforward, because notice how the internal pullback phase which is taking place is bearish, and that is in line with our overall 4-hour directional bias, which is bearish as well. And so this means that essentially we can continue to look for potential sell opportunities to trade this internal pullback phase up until the point that either we end up violating our week low, or up until the point that our internal continuation phase begins in order to potentially target that internal week high. But if we were to see that internal continuation take place, and if we were to see that internal week high violate, this 4-hour supply, which forms part again of that supply chain, would then essentially be the last POI where our 4-hour continuation could originate from. With this POI, we would then also have the option to either trade it directly using a sell limit order like this on the 4-hour time frame, then looking to target our 4-hour week low. That would be more of a swing trade approach. Or what we could do instead is wait for a mitigation of that POI and then wait for our internal structure to shift from a bullish market state to a bearish market state before then looking to get involved in potential sell opportunities down towards that week low. And then finally, if I just very quickly show you the 15-minute time frame, which to be fair will only really be relevant for the first day or so after this particular video goes live, but just to show you guys what I mean when I talk about looking for potential sell opportunities to trade that 4-hour internal pullback. Here we have our 15-minute structure, which was pointing bearish, but then shifted bullish after this 15-minute high was violated. We had our 15-minute internal structure that was pointing bullish as it was facilitating the impulsive phase. And then that internal structure shifted bearish, signaling the start of our 15-minute pullback phase. Hence the reason we were able to establish a new 15-minute week high, i.e. our 4-hour internal week high, and we're able to establish this new structural range. And so, because of the fact that right now, as it stands, our 15-minute strong low coincides with our 4-hour week low, we can essentially continue to look for potential sell opportunities to trade this 15-minute pullback phase up until the point that our internal structure shifts from a bearish market state to a bullish market state. And if we zoom into most recent price action here on the 15-minute time frame, at the time of recording this video, we can see that we recently had this bearish 15-minute internal breaker structure. Our 15-minute internal strong high is located in here. Price action is currently trading within this 15-minute internal impulsive phase that facilitated this internal bearish break of structure, but we already have a 15-minute supply zone in here that now offers us a potential sell opportunity to trade this 15-minute pullback phase. And so this is what I meant when I said we can essentially look to trade that 4-hour internal pullback phase up until the point that either the 4-hour week low is violated, or up until the point that this pullback phase ends, our continuation phase begins, and potentially looks to target that week high. One thing that could potentially happen here on EUR/USD, specifically the 15-minute time frame, is if price action stops short of mitigating our EQ, we could potentially see a temporary internal structure shift from bearish to bullish in order to facilitate a mitigation of this 15-minute supply zone before a possible bearish resumption. And the reason I say that is because if we drop back out to the 4-hour time frame very quickly, and if I draw your attention to the presence of this 4-hour supply zone, which can be extended all the way to this wick high in here, you'll see that we now have an area of imbalance combined with a potential liquidity pool in here, which could help facilitate a mitigation of this 4-hour supply before a possible resumption. So a couple of interesting scenarios that could play out here on EUR/USD, particularly on the 4-hour time frame. But overall, I would say that our outlook on this pair for the month of Feb is going to be bearish. That directional bias would change if we were to see a violation of this 4-hour strong high, because that level being violated would then essentially signal the start of our daily pullback phase. That would then give us a bullish directional bias up towards initially this daily supply flip zone in here. So definitely feel free to check out EUR/USD. I think there's going to be some good opportunities for the month of Feb. If you guys found this video helpful, informative, or entertaining in any way, please make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. And as always, I appreciate you guys so much for watching.